Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida Extension Service here in Hernando County. And with me this morning is Bernie, one of our Master Gardener volunteers. Good morning, Bernie. How you doing?
Good morning, doctor. I'm doing very well this morning.
Good. We're glad to hear that. And Colby is not with us once again this week. Colby has been busy out there getting married. So he's supposed to be back in a week or so. Not really sure what day. I never did put it on my calendar, so I couldn't say for sure. But okay, at least we're not all alone. We do have some other people here with us this morning. So Bassem, good morning. How you doing? Uh, Veronica, how are you doing? And if anybody here, Buddy, good morning. How are you? From up in the beautiful Panhandle. Always a little bit chillier than we are, but hey, what's the temperature right now? My computer's not really saying in the bottom corner here. It's nice out there now. And it's also, as Bernie had to point out to me this morning, the first day of spring. So happy spring, everybody. And yes, as soon as he gets back, everybody's going to have to put on lots of congratulations for Colby. So hey, if anybody watching us live has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll show them on the screen. We'll do our best to answer them. Guess we could talk about spring this morning. It's spring, so weather's nice, cool in the morning, warm in the afternoon. Really got nothing to complain about weather-wise, do we, Bernie?
No, that's really been nice. That last group of storms that went through had some really weird effects over the entire nation. So we don't need any more of those. That was really.
No.
Um,
Did you get any really bad weather? Because I know there were all kinds of warnings and reports on TV. We got rain for a bit. Nothing to write home about.
we got a lot of wind. I was surprised that we didn't get any wind damage. We had some very healthy gusts, but the rain wasn't too bad. That wasn't a problem.
Okay, well, the rain coming in right today is up in the Panhandle right now. So heading this way towards Central Florida. Um, 67 or 70s during the day is nice. I had to break down and cut my grass for the first time this spring the other day. It was pretty much just weeds. I mean, the grass really hasn't grown any, just those spring weeds that shoot up and all of a sudden get a foot and a half high. Um, but other than that, the weather's been beautiful. I thought it was very nice when I was out there cutting it.
Now, the thing that people need to remember is that all those little spring weeds that have popped up and done nothing but put seeds everywhere, the wild pepper and just whatever they are, those all those little seeds will be back next spring. So uh, that is where you use a pre-emergent. If you want to get rid of them, regular weed killer isn't going to do it for you. Uh, the seeds are there, and regular weed killers are going to do nothing but kill the mama and allow the babies to keep growing. Well, pre-emergent is going to stop those seeds from germinating. So next spring, or really early in the season, maybe 1st of February, if you go through and put down some pre-emergent, maybe even in January, you'll be able to stop those things. But if you don't, uh, all those plants that put down seeds, if only 3 or 4 of them germinate, you get 3 or 4 more plants than you had next year. And then the next year you get more, and the next year it explodes, and you wonder where they came from. It's because you let them grow up. So,
Exactly. All
and
right, and we
and
have a couple pretty good questions here. Here, we'll start with the second one here. Ryan wants to know, hi, are you able to answer a question regarding a turfgrass virus? We can do our very best. Yes, we can. So what kind of turfgrass virus are you talking about? And it's probably the sugarcane mosaic virus for St. Augustine. which we have not identified here in Hernando County yet. I mean, there may be somebody who lost their lawn to it here, but I haven't seen it in person. I know you haven't either.
No.
One day we will. It's around, it's all over Florida. And because it's in South Florida, they grow an awful lot of sod down there. So if a little bit of that gets infected, they put it on a truck and they take it all over Florida. No telling where it's going to pop up. So one day we'll see a lawn here with that problem. And I guess this is kind of a thought question here. But Sam asks, what are the most invasive plants in Central Florida?
Hmm.
My top three would be Brazilian pepper, and it all depends on where you live. Here in Hernando County, it's almost exclusively along the coast. We do have some spots inland. South of us, it's all over the entire county. And then even further south of that, it's, very, very, very widespread. So Brazilian pepper, air potato vine used to be a huge problem. It's less of a problem now because of the air potato beetle, which has helped to slow and or stop its spread. So it's not spreading as fast as it used to. But wooded areas that have a lot of air potato vine in them, it still comes up every spring. So that's a very noticeable major one. And for a homeowner, a really, really tough one to deal with and get rid of would be torpedo grass, which is an invasive weed. And the roots go very, very deep. And if you think you're just going to take a trowel and I'll just dig it all up and get rid of all of it, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to have to spray it with an herbicide. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to do that. You can remove most of the torpedo grass with a trowel or shovel or whatever, but you're not going to get it all, and it will come back. Stuff's really, really tough and durable. So, what are your three favorites, Bernie?
Well, depending on where you are in the state, you don't want to forget the Melaleuca. I agree with Brazilian pepper and the air potato, but also Chinese tallow,
Yeah,
which, boy, is that a nuisance. And old world climbing fern, which is not hasn't been such a problem here, but is throughout the state.
we're starting to find that basically more and more here in Hernando County. Had a sample or two come in. So it spreads by wind-blown spores. So once it's here, it starts to spread and spread and spread and spread.
There's several of those things that you know the worst invasive we have in Florida is whatever one is in your lawn right now.
Exactly. That's your worst problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, Ryan is asking about the sugarcane mosaic virus, which is a virus that for many years has been a kind of on and off again problem with sugarcane in South Florida. But what happens is it can also infect St. Augustine turfgrass. So he says it's spreading in Pasco, Zephyr Hills, especially. Well, it's sorry to hear that. Obviously, we're going to end up having to deal with that problem. Also, Bernie, what do we do if these people in Spring Hill are all still throwing down St. Augustine turfgrass? And I got an email from a lady whose daughter is in a subdivision not far from here. I don't want to throw the name out, but um, they require they have St. Augustine grass, and it's died like every year for the past couple of years. And they got another letter saying replace your lawn, it's dead. And can they force them to do that? Yes, they can force you to do that. And I pointed out that it's probably just been managed very, very badly. We do have a problem with fungal disease, take all root rot around here. What do we do if all these people are now facing take all root rot and a spreading virus also with their St. Augustine?
Well, what'll happen is people will switch to something else, probably zoysia. And
Ugh.
for
No, 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 no. We don't want
well,
that.
what's going to happen is that whatever grass it is, it's going to take them 5 years to learn how to maintain it. So they're going to
Mm.
have nothing but problems initially. And then everything will be fine for 5 more years. And then the problems start. Once you've had a monoculture for about 10 years, it makes no difference what it is. I mean, if you're up north and it's soybeans or corn, or you're in the south and it's grass or orange trees or whatever, once the population has been there long enough, the bad guys have had enough time to grow in such numbers that they start overtaking the efforts to solve the problems. And eventually, whatever they switch to will be exactly the same problems as they're having now. So, it really makes no difference. As soon as you use a monoculture and everybody has the same monoculture, everybody's going to eventually have the same problems. And
Yeah.
the real cure is to change the mindset so that one person can have Bahia and one person can have Bermuda and one person can have St. Augustine Floritam and the next person can have some other variety of St. Augustine and somebody will have an improved version of Bermuda, and as long as it's not a total monoculture, nobody's going to have the problems that they've got now. Unfortunately, if you want it to all look the same, if you want to be able to stand at the end of the street and see the same sea of grass all the way down to as far as you can see, you're going to always have these problems. It is a function of people being uh, so narrow sighted that they don't understand and don't want to pay any attention to what is obvious to anybody with a brain. And we're dealing with people here that totally understand these things. But uh, for some reason, if you get to be in charge of you're the homeowners association, what appeared to be good sense just suddenly disappears. It's like they extract it at the initiation ceremony for the homeowners association. So uh, you need to really vote how you want things to be, and you need to be your own person if you have that right. And uh, stop the monoculture. It's just going to be that is a fact of life with monoculture of anything.
Yeah, and if you disagree with your homeowners association, get involved, get on a committee, run to be in charge of a committee or in charge of your homeowners association. So,
You know the old saying about power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That seems to be what happens. People with good intentions go for the homeowners thing, and as soon as people with good intentions get in, they seem to have the same problems, and it's uh, and I do understand that you have a great idea and you campaign on that idea with all your neighbors and you get elected, and now because you had a great idea, you feel like all your ideas are great ideas, and anybody that disagrees with them is probably wrong. So you ignore the disagreeers and push through your own ideas, and some of them are good, some of them aren't. But uh, once you get to the top position, you can only see one set of ideas, and that's yours. And it
yeah.
presents a problem, and that's kind of human nature. If I was king, you probably wouldn't like me anymore.
Yeah, and people with homeowners associations, I mean, they want the best for the neighborhood. They want it to look great. But if you get it in your head that everybody must have St. Augustine or Zoysia or whatever it might be, and if it's just not the appropriate turf grass for your neighborhood for whatever reason, you can't force it to grow and do well just by stamping your feet on the ground and ordering it to do so. Doesn't work like that. So we always, the argument about whether St. Augustine is Florida friendly or not comes up a lot. And technically, it's both and neither. So St. Augustine grass is not Florida unfriendly, but if you're trying to plant it in a spot where it's not going to do well, heavy shade, soil that's infected with take all root rot, some other kind of issues, then it's not Florida friendly because it's not the right plant for the right place. But other than that, if you put it in a spot where and soils and care for it in a way where it does thrive, it's fine. So it's one of those kind of strange gray areas. And Teresa shared a link to a University of Florida publication that kind of gives everybody an overview of sugarcane mosaic virus and can it be spread by mowing? I'm not positive. It may very well be spread by mowing. So if you have a service that cuts a lawn that's infected and then they mow your lawn and get clippings in there, that may be a way that it spreads. But Ryan's also asking about how to stop or slow the spread of it. With viruses, it's very, very difficult. Viruses usually infect plants physically or mechanically because of some kind of damage to the plant. Um, Scraping when they want to at the lab inoculate a plant with the virus because they're studying something. They usually take a little piece of sandpaper and rough up the leaf and then rub it with the virus, and that's a great way to get a virus in a plant. So if you think about it, turf grass, what do you do when you cut it? You're cutting off the top, nice open end, leaves it open for a virus to get in. Currently, the biggest problem with sugarcane mosaic virus is that it's getting into nurseries and sod farms where they grow the sod and infecting the sod there. Over time, my guess is it will spread more and more because we have a lot of St. Augustine grass in the state. A lot of people have it in their yards. They're always growing more. We're building more, putting in more lawns every single day here in Hernando County. And why these neighborhoods insist on putting in St. Augustine in the front yard and Bahia in the back, I don't know. That's one of the worst plans that I could possibly think of. But my guess is that you know, Ryan, you're probably going to start to see more and more problems and more spread of it. But I haven't spoken with anybody in Pasco County for a bit, so I hadn't really heard that it's becoming more widespread there.
Interesting thing about this grass thing, we have a very limited number of choices because there is no native grass that will produce a lawn growing in Florida. For the most part, all of the lawn grasses in North America have come from somewhere else. So with that in mind, we're at 28 degrees north latitude. We require a warm weather grass, warm season grass. Where do we get it? If we go east, we go through the Sahara Desert, we go through the Arabian Peninsula, we go through the desert of India, we go through the jungle of China, we come back to the desert southwest of the United States. At none of these places is there grass growing. Nowhere on earth is there a grass growing that makes a lawn grass at 28 degrees north latitude. So we've got to take some grass from somewhere else and try and force it to grow where it doesn't want to be. So grass is actually an exotic plant in Florida. Our native, there's several native grasses, but the one that's closest is the wiregrass that grows in the uh, palm forest, or not palm, the pine forest, and that grass is beautiful in little bunches, but it won't make a lawn. So we're taking something that doesn't want to be here. We're trying to force it to grow. It's never really happy that we put it here, and we have almost no place that we can go to get something else. So all these grasses that are being redeveloped are basically from 5 families of grass, and they're all varieties of one of those five, and all five of them don't want to be here. So when you say what's the best grass for our area, the best grass is to let it go and have a freedom lawn. Whatever wants
Yep.
to grow grows, and you mow it. Unfortunately, that doesn't work well on a homeowner situation. And the sad part about it is, in the entire United States, and until we got to the 1950s, that was what everybody had. Nobody had monoculture lawns. The only place they existed anywhere in the country was in a very few rich estates and in golf courses. And other than that, people had what they had. And if you're my age, you remember playing out in the yard looking for four-leaf clovers. Well, you can't do that anymore, because if you've got clover, that's now a weed everywhere in the country, and we have to do away with it. And you took the dandelions and you blew the little tops off of them
Hmm.
and watched them float away. You don't do that because dandelions are a weed and you have to poison it. So, uh, in a relatively short period of time, our entire mindset has changed, and our entire way of growing things has changed. And unfortunately, we don't have a good answer. We have uh, I don't know, at best 125 years of working on trying to find warm season lawns. And the original state that did all the groundwork, believe it or not, was Oklahoma. So uh, they started the research. University of Florida, Texas A&M got together, and they took some grass they found growing at a monastery in St. Augustine, and called it St. Augustine grass, and they developed a variety that they called Floritam, standing for the University of Florida and Texas A&M. And it had problems, and they've solved some of the problems, but they haven't solved the big problem, which is nobody wants to grow at 28 degrees north latitude. Don't blame them. We're a desert, with it, with the exception of some rainfall we get off the coast, the East Coast watering the West Coast, and the West Coast watering the East Coast, and we don't look like a desert. But if we were anywhere else on this earth, we would be. So uh, there, in a nutshell, is why grass is such a terrible problem in Florida.
Yeah, let's go through some of these comments here. Um, yeah, Mitchell, Bahia grass is basically a lower maintenance grass type, and a lot the builders who are putting in St. Augustine in the front and Bahia in the back are doing so for a number of different reasons. That way, they put in irrigation in the front, but they don't have to put it in the back. Save some money that way. St. Augustine is more expensive than Bahia, so if you put Bahia in the back, save some money that way. The problem with that is St. Augustine and Bahia are managed totally differently. And a lot of time, and with most things, a lot of the different chemicals you might use for weed control, what you use for St. Augustine will kill Bahia and vice versa. So if there's any overspray, drift, the guy actually physically doing the spraying from the truck who goes through the neighborhood, if he does it wrong, you're going to end up with a dead front lawn or a dead back lawn. It's hard enough to teach people how to manage one turf type or the other. It's a lot harder to teach them how to manage two different types. They even are supposed to get cut at different heights. And lawn services don't want to do that. They just want to set their mower at one height, zip, 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 zip through the yard with a really huge lawnmower, and then leave and do the next yard. So, yeah, and builders and neighbors and HOA presidents and other people will tell homeowners you have to water your St. Augustine more often. It has to stay wet. Here in Hernando County, we have huge problems with take all root rot. And one of the things that really stimulates it and causes a big outbreak of it is if your St. Augustine is too wet. That's why we usually get the biggest outbreaks anywhere from middle of summer until the fall, depending on how much rain we've got. So if we have a really rainy summer, by fall, we have big outbreaks that take all root rot. It's from all the excess moisture. People who start to have problems with it and they have dead spots in their yard, their first response is, I must water more. I must violate the watering restrictions. I'm going to go complain to somebody saying, I need to be exempt from restrictions. I have to water my lawn 5 times a week because I'm special. My lawn is special. It needs more water. There's a dead spot. And they don't realize that the more water you put on, the faster that dead spot is going to grow and become. So Bahia is cheaper. It's not free, and keep in mind any kind of turf grass is going to be expensive now, but St. Augustine is generally much more expensive. I have no idea how Zoysia fits in with that. Is Zoysia more expensive than St. Augustine, or
About the same.
probably about the same? Yeah, we have very little Zoysia here in Hernando County, thank goodness. It's if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to end up with a dead lawn. So there's a steep learning curve when it comes to managing Zoysia. Um, yeah, and why people would obsess with a Bahia lawn about controlling weeds. And I deal with people. I've looked at pictures. I talk to people. They show me pictures of their yard. It's Bahia grass, and it's like half weeds. They say, well, what do I spray on it to kill all the weeds? It's like, well, why do you want to do that? Well, because there's weeds there, and I need to have just grass. Okay, well, think about this. You spray a product on it, product ABC herbicide, and it's successful. It works. You spray it on the right day, you follow the directions, you evenly apply it, and it works. So what do you have now? What do you have now, Bernie, in your yard?
You have holes in your lawn. Every
You have,
place the weeds died, you have a hole.
and then what comes up in those empty spots after a couple weeks?
It's not Bahia, it's another weed.
More weeds. So then you spray it again, and it's successful. Then what happens?
You just keep repeating this forever and ever. You know,
Exactly.
the interesting thing, Bill, is that if you put in Bahia lawn and you realize that each one of those little blades is an individual, that means that in the normal course of things, some of those little individuals are going to die and produce holes in the lawn. So, nature had a cure for that. Uh, as soon as you mow the lawn, the Bahia thinks that the cows came through and ate the tops of it off, and they do something that just drives people nuts. They pop up these little things with a V on top, and now we got all these seed heads, and they look so ugly. They go out and they mow them down. Well, those
It's
seed
free
heads
Bahia
that you
seeds.
mowed are what we're going to replant and keep those holes from showing up. So if you uh, don't let it go to seed and you don't overseed to keep the holes filled in, what kind of a lawn are you going to end up with? Every time one dies, and they die because of just old age or uh, any number of things causes one to die. As soon as there's a hole, there's going to be a weed unless you replant the Bahia.
Yeah, it really helps if during the summer you get a bag of Bahia seed and start throwing some seed out there when we're getting really regular rain. And bit by bit, it's going to add to the number of grass plants you have in your yard and help to thicken the lawn up some. But if you do absolutely nothing, your Bahia lawn, because you're cutting it with a lawnmower, and to make it worse, some people cut it way too short. You need to cut your Bahia 3 to 4 inches tall. Also, it keeps it healthier and it's much better for it. But if you don't do something to help thicken that lawn up, it's going to thin out and it's going to start to get filled in with weeds. So, guys, with the Bahia lawn, you're going to have some weeds. So just learn to live with it. Take up a hobby. Set your mind on something else. Go sit quietly in the backyard. Breathe deeply. Don't flip out over a couple weeds in your lawn and move on because
But
not worth the aggravation.
Bahia lawns are only happy in a particular pH range, from 5 to 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
So if your soil is 7, which a lot of people in our county have soils around 7, um, the Bahia will not do well if the pH is 7. It almost doesn't grow if the soil is a 7.5. So, if you put a pH or put a Bahia lawn in a 7 pH and it doesn't do well, you should have expected it not to do well. The planting the soil or planting in soil that you don't know the pH is like jumping into water where you don't know if there's alligators or not. You know, maybe
Yeah.
it's fine and maybe it isn't, but you have no idea. So if you don't do a soil test at least once, you're flying blind the whole time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with new home construction all over Florida, when they build the home, if they bring in fill dirt and then that's the soil that they put the turf grass on top of, it could have a pH as high as 8.5. And I don't see it very often, but I have seen it. Here in Florida, soil pHs top out at pretty much 8.5 because that's the pH of lime, and we have a lot of lime in the soil. Uh, in theory, pHs can get higher than that, but it's like out in New Mexico, and it's because of salts. So if you have a new house built and they put down Bahia grass, and the pH of the fill dirt that's out there that the Bahia is on top of is 8.5, it will get really thin. It will get really thin, and it will look not very good at all. And if you do nothing, weeds are going to replace the Bahia grass that died because the pH is just way too high for Bahia to do well. And I like this. Mitchell comes up with the saying, "The my weed killer is in my hands," and that needs to be on a T-shirt. I'm going to write that one down. We may do something with that. So, and yeah, he's going to put it on his next set of uniforms. Um, you know, if you live in a neighborhood with a homeowners association, you have just as much of a say in your future as each and every one of your neighbors has. So it's usually best to work with your neighbors, work together. I know I have heard of neighborhoods that had really bad expensive problems, and they've been able to work it out. They've come up with solutions that you're never going to make everybody happy, but it makes most everybody happy. So if you have and be realistic, I see people in Facebook groups and they say, I live in a neighborhood and I have a homeowners association and I want to make my entire yard Florida friendly. I want to put in just Florida friendly plants and vines in my front yard and plant the whole front yard in corn. And they say that I can't because they're a mean HOA. Of course, your HOA says you can't do that. Come on, none of your neighborhoods wants to look at a cornfield in your front yard. If it was me, you know what? I'd be okay with it because that's just how I am. Bernie, if your neighbor had the whole front yard planted in corn, would you be okay with it?
I don't care what they do. My rights end at the property line. After that, nothing exists as far as I'm concerned. So I don't care what
Yeah,
they do.
yeah. Hey, you do you, boo. So, my next door neighbor growing a front yard of corn, if it does well, I hope he'd be nice enough to give me some. But other than that, I got no problems with it. Unfortunately, HOAs, oh my gosh, makes their heads explode. So don't don't expect all of your neighbors to go along with everything that you might want from your HOA. But the best thing to do is get involved, go to meetings, be polite, give your opinion, speak your mind, work with other people. Either you run for office or have your friend or neighbor or somebody else run for office. And that's how you make positive changes in whether it be in a county or a community or something as small as an HOA.
The problem is everybody that's unhappy in an HOA knew they were in an HOA at the time they put their money down.
And they
And
give you a copy of the rules. Read the rules before you sign the documents at closing.
and they obviously did not spend enough time educating themselves. You know, if you make a $200,000 purchase of just about anything, you're going to be pretty well up on what it is. But not understand an HOA, uh, and when you've spent that kind of money, is that's almost a sin on your part. So uh, hopefully, uh, the problem is understood well enough that more and more people understand what they're getting into. Uh, it may be that if there's enough outcry about HOAs, that some of these builders will build non-HOA additions. I doubt it, but you can always hope for it.
Mhm.
And if people demand it, and other people can make money on it, you can be sure it will happen.
Teresa, since I keep seeing all these links popping up here, I know that you're listening and watching. Teresa is works in our office here, and neither Bernie nor I could make it through a Thursday without her. Right? You agree, Bernie?
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, Teresa, could you pull up a link to Pasco County Extension Office and go ahead and throw it in the chat there? So, Ryan, yes, you have an extension office right there in Pasco County also, because every county in Florida, there's 67 counties in Florida, and each one has an extension office. So, Teresa will pull up a link to their website, and they're going to know more about what's happening specifically in Pasco County. They're more familiar with the neighborhoods, the development, everything else. Just like I know the names of the HOAs and neighborhoods here, and who has outbreaks to take on and who doesn't have a problem, this and that. They're going to be more knowledgeable with specific Pasco County things,
Yeah,
even though
they've
our
just
neighbors were real close. Hey,
they've just refurbished the offices in Pasco, and they'd love to have more people come in. They're a pretty nice bunch of people down there, so uh, we heartily recommend them. I'm sure that if you were in our county, that they would recommend us. So
and we've even had their Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator on here before, and their Master Gardener Coordinator. I need to get a hold of her and have her back. Um, so, what is a good way to lower soil pH? Granular sulfur. Yes, sulfur does lower soil's pH, but it has to be reapplied fairly frequently, like at least twice a year, maybe more. Applying that much sulfur to either lower the pH for a tree or for something as large as a lawn is going to be a little bit more problematic. So, I
the
see Teresa put a link to lowering soil pH to optimize nutrient management and crop production, which should give you some information on that. And there's the contact information for our friends next door in Pasco County with Pasco County Extension.
the big problem with trying to lower the pH is a thing called buffering capacity, and so much of our soil has a real high percentage of limestone, which is what makes the pH high to begin with. And limestone is a tremendous buffer. You apply something and you lower the pH and it goes right back. And you apply something and it goes right back and it goes right back. And until you have applied enough stuff to get rid of all the limestone, which is pretty much all of the soil, uh, it never goes down and stays down. So uh, the best thing to do, if, for instance, if you have a 7.5 pH and you need grass, just don't plant bahia. Pick one of the other grasses,
Yeah,
plant something else, and that's pretty much true of all the things. If you know that you have a very high pH, there are plants that will survive under a high pH. You just have to be careful and pick those. Um, Changing the pH to make something grow, you can do that for a temporary basis. If you have flowers, uh, well, it depends on the pH. If you have a 7.5 pH, obviously St. Augustine's going to be better. St. Augustine, the extreme limits are from six and a from seven, no six, from 6 to 7.5. So from 6 to 7.5 is good for St. Augustine. For 5 to 6.5 is good for Bahia. So if you're outside the limits, if you had a 5.5 pH, St. Augustine will do poorly, and if you have a 7.5 pH, Bahia will do poorly. So uh,
And I'm so surprised that people will get their yard resodded and never bother to test the soil pH, and then the company they're dealing with, and they're talking to them, and the company would be like, "Well, do you want St. Augustine? Do you want Bahia?" It's like, "Well, I had St. Augustine before it died. I like Bahia." I can't believe they don't test for pH before they install
well,
a lawn.
the thing that's even more difficult to understand is you replace the lawn because it died, and it died for a reason. And
Yeah,
without figuring out what the reason is, we throw another group of soil or sod down, and it dies for the same reason. And after about the fourth or fifth time, somebody starts calling and they say, "Hey, I've replaced the sod 5 times, and the new stuff is dying. I think these people are selling me bad sod." Well, that's not true. I think you have a problem that nobody ever bothered to correct.
yeah, and that's where management comes in. We see that all the time with St. Augustine grass and take all root rot. People have a St. Augustine lawn and they manage it poorly. They cut it too short. They water too much, over fertilizing, over treating with herbicides, or a combination of all of them. So when it dies, they get the lawn replaced and they manage it the exact same. And they wonder why it dies again in 1 to 3 years. And then to make it worse, people will do that several times before it hits them like, why is this happening? Well, what can I do about this? I want it to stop. This is getting really, really expensive. And it is really expensive. And, then we tell them, look, you're not supposed to cut your St. Augustine grass this tall. It's 4 inches minimum. Being able to cut it higher is even better. If you physically have a mower or a way to maintain your St. Augustine grass at 5 inches high, there's a very good chance that it's going to be very, very thick, very, very healthy. You'll have very few weeds in it because St. Augustine that high is shading out the weeds and not giving them much room to get established. You could have a beautiful lawn. People, oh, it looks too long. I want it to look short. I want it to look shorter. It's terrible for St. Augustine grass. It's going to suffer health wise.
And, the same thing applies to other things. Your landscape plants uh, all have a pH range that they're going to be happy in. Uh, if you want to plant azaleas and you've got a 7.8 lawn, azaleas are not going to live. They're going to die.
Nope. They will
We're going
die
to do
quickly.
best underneath an oak tree. And the reason is that oak tree has been dropping leaves year after year after year after year. The tannic acid keeps the pH of the soil going down, and because it's there continuously, even if you've got high pH soil, we've been applying this tannic acid year round for a lot of years. We've added a lot of organic material, and it's the only place that the azaleas are going to be happy. You put them anywhere else, uh, they won't work. Gardenias, camellias, there are a lot of plants that might do great somewhere else on the property, but you can't just plant them in front of the windows where you'd like them. Uh, if they filled in the front lawn with uh, basically limestone soil, this 7.5 pH, you're restricted to a lot of things that you cannot use uh, strictly because of the soil pH. There again, it goes back to one time you need to have a soil test run. The soil test very, very, very seldom changes over a long period of time. So if it's 7.8 today, it might only be 7.7 in 10 years, but that's insignificant. So, and if it's 6.2, it's going to be in that 6.2 area forever. And you need to pick plants based on what you've got. If you have a fantastic amount of phosphorus. You know, flowering plants do well if you got a lot of phosphorus. If you're really short on phosphorus, flowering plants don't do well if you don't have a lot of phosphorus. So, you know, there are some things that you need to know, and almost nobody knows. So,
And getting your soil pH tested is very easy. Just contact your county's extension office and get some information. I know that at our office, we have you send the samples off to the lab in Gainesville. So you have to pay for postage for a little box. You only send off a small amount of soil and a form, and it's only $10. Other counties do the pH testing in house. We don't. We don't have the room or the lab equipment to be able to do that. But no matter which extension office you go to, it's a very reasonable price and a very small price to pay to potentially ward off big expensive problems down the road. I got this a couple years ago. A gentleman in Hernando Beach emailed me, and he used to have a St. Augustine lawn and it died. He had gotten it resodded 6 months ago with Bahia, and it looked good, but now it's like really going downhill, starting to look worse and worse. And he got a soil test done, and he asked me to explain to him what was going on. I opened up the soil test, and it pH is like 7.8, not good for a Bahia lawn.
yeah.
And he said he spent $3,000 resodding his yard. This is a couple years ago. This is probably pre-COVID, so who knows how much it would cost to resod his yard now.
And these little instruments that you buy for like $10 at the hardware store or whatever that measure the soil pH and the little test that you measure all these various things, uh, they're about as accurate as sticking your finger in the ground and looking at your finger and saying, "Hey, I must have a pH of this because my finger didn't fall off." So,
Yeah,
they, in other words, save your money. They have no accuracy whatsoever.
yeah.
The
They usually
soil
come in.
moisture things are
They're
bad.
usually a point off. So if your soil is like pH is 7.0, it's going to measure maybe 6, maybe 8,
Yeah.
but they're quite a bit off. So hey guys, good conversation today. Good conversation on lawns here and turf grass. Thank you, Teresa, for all these links that you put up here. Teresa's found everything that University of Florida has on understanding soil pH and how to manage it and why it's important, how to change it, if it can be changed. Probably the best route to go is know your pH in different parts of your yard and just do your best to work with it, because you could change it. Changing it is only temporary, and you're going to have to keep changing it over and over and over forever. Um, if you want to grow a plant that requires acidic soil, like you really, really want an azalea, a gardenia, a blueberry bush, is something like that, and your soil is naturally high pH, try growing that plant in a large container, because you could use a quality potting soil, throw a good amount of peat moss in with it. Peat moss is naturally very acidic. Its pH is like 5 or 5.5, something like that. So mixed in with potting soil is going to end up being acidic soil, and your gardenia, azalea, or blueberry is going to grow just fine in that, in a container. So there's certain options, certain ways you can get around it, things you could do. You can get creative, but other than that, it's usually easiest to work with your natural soil pH. It will always drift back to whatever the natural pH was forever,
You
for
know,
the
that
next 1,000 years.
that brings up the thing about native plants. A lot of people have the impression that if it's a native plant, it'll grow in my soil because it's native. And there again, even the native plants have requirements: shade, temperature, and pH. And if you don't match those three requirements, you can't expect a plant to do well. So, uh, don't run out and buy just native plants expecting them to all do fantastic, because The ones that grew close to the water's edge uh, probably need a lot more water than you're going to give them,
Yeah.
and probably need a lower pH soil than what you're going to have. And those that grew up at the top underneath uh, some kind of a tree where there was a lot of shade are not going to be happy in front of your house in the full sun. So uh, try and match the plants. The saying is right plant, right place, and I learned that, God, 30 some years ago when we moved here, and found out that uh, I could go to the nursery and buy a plant and put it in the ground, and it may or may not do well. But if I dug it up and planted it in a different environment, that might change things dramatically. And that was my beginning to being a gardener, was finding out that it actually made a difference to have right plant in the right place. So uh, it's exciting when you learn that, and it's very disappointing when you don't know that, and you get to watch things die that you had a spot they would have been very happy. So remember that three things: the sunlight, the water requirements, and the pH requirements, and those things, and temperature. Let's make it four things. So those things pretty well determine what plant's going to work just about any time you want to plant something.
Okay, guys, if anybody watching us live has any last minute questions, go ahead and type them into the chat so we can get them answered as we begin to kind of wrap up here. Um, Let me share some contact information. There is my email. If you have any questions, if you're watching this as a recording, you have any questions, go ahead and reach out to me at that email address. That's by far the best way to get a hold of me. Here is our office phone number. If you want to get a hold of Bernie, Bernie is normally here on Thursdays, so you can call the office. And Teresa, who's putting all those helpful links in the chat, will answer the phone and put you through to Bernie, and Bernie can help answer your question. We have a huge number of past recorded classes that are all on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and look up Hernando County Government, they have a YouTube channel. And if you go to their YouTube channel and you look under the playlists, there's one for Florida Friendly Landscaping, one for Extension. We have a lot of recorded classes there, a lot of good learning. Let's put down Colby's email, even though he's not here. You guys can all just shoot him an email and just tell him congratulations. Just fill his inbox. So when he comes back to work, he's going to go, oh my gosh, how did I get all these emails? And then he's going to wonder, oh my gosh, how did everybody know I got married? Write it down, shoot him an email, tell him congratulations, let him know you're thinking about him. And I think that's about it. Buddy, you have a great day. Also, you enjoy your beautiful spring up there. I know that you're always a few degrees behind us. But for both of us, you know what? It's going to be summer before you know it. Seems like spring only lasts like a week or two sometimes here in Florida. But that's okay. I don't mind summer. I'm totally okay with it. And Bassem, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, guys, for asking so many questions. Because if you didn't come on here with us live, we get really, really lonely and we probably quit doing it. So let's go ahead and wrap it up for this week. We may or may not be on next Thursday. We're still working that out. So check our Facebook page. Check your YouTube notifications if you're watching us through YouTube. Yeah, we got people on here watching us every which way imaginable. So, like I said, we might be on here again next Thursday. We might not be. But other than that, everybody and have a really happy first day of spring here. Get outside, enjoy the beautiful weather. Although I don't know if we've got rain coming through, it may not be beautiful all over Florida. Hopefully, where you live is beautiful. Get out there, get some fresh air, get some gardening in this weekend before it gets too hot. And other than that, we will see you again either next week or the week after that, or at least sometime really soon. So until then, everybody take care. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.